Hey everybody, welcome to Black Spring with Autumn on this January 8th, 2020. And if you're just now joining us for the first time, I'd like to say hi and welcome everybody here. And I'm here mainly because I just want to talk a little bit about it seems like there's been a little bit of an environment of stress, war stresses. Um, of course, I think some of that comes from fear mongering, and of course, that comes out of the left. I think most patriots and most of our men and women, they're pretty confident in what they do and what they're trained to do. They were never trained to be babysitters or to bow down to uh, acts of war or terrorist or any of those things. So that's kind of what brings me to this particular segment. And I just wanted to see if you guys had any thoughts on, or what are your experiences with the stresses of the Iran attacks and the responses. There's a couple of things that I want to share specifically. So if you'll go with me just a second here. For one, we all know that, of course, our country has seen many, we've seen many war times, but one of the most disrespectful war periods, I would think was during the Vietnam War. And that was actually I think it was I'm touching on the return of the American soldiers from those particular conflicts in Vietnam. And it just seems like, with all the tensions and all the people that were projecting World War III, and, there was a bit of mocking of World War III. Not to mention, I've seen quite a few people going onto social media to basically mock some of the soldiers. I mean, many people went so far as to, even mention, burial policies for soldiers. And, I think if there was one particular soldier that made a comment saying, you need to be mindful that, this is real life and we're doing a job. And basically, he even went so far as to say, look, I have 7 more months of service. And I know you guys are sitting around watching TV at home, but this is real life. I'm doing my service. I committed to defending the nation against domestic and foreigners, and I'm doing my job. So it would be appreciated if you could stop the mockery and stop the jokes. And I just thought that was one of the most disgusting things that I've seen, next to, some of the returns, the responses that some of our soldiers, that the treatment they received when they came home. Some people were treated well, and some people were treated horribly. They were named as, people threw out things like, oh, baby killers and all kinds of horrible things at many of the soldiers that served in the Vietnam War. So I'm just thinking, it's still, why do we engage? Where does this come from? Does it come from the stresses of war? Or is it humor? Is that a coping mechanism that people have made jokes and created memes about our American soldiers, our men and women serving in the U.S. military? I mean, you had many special forces. We had people that lost their lives in Kenya. And I'm just thinking, how far removed are we as a nation from reality? And why do we create this kind of disrespect? And it gets back to our men and women of the armed services. It does. And it's I'm sure not only is it hurtful to them, but it makes them, at some point, I'm sure it contributes to their own anxieties and stresses about what they're doing. We're here defending our nation in the name of our nation, and in the name of our president and our country. And look what our people are doing. You know, they're engaging in all kinds of things to that basically either marginalize, you know, what our missions are, what we appear to be doing here. And I just thought that was, you know, that was one of the worst things that I think I saw. I mean, this was something that I saw maybe on an Instagram, where a soldier was basically asking people to mind their manners, mind what you say, because it does in fact get back to them. But I will move on to the most egregious part of what I'm presenting, if you will, this evening. And that, my friends, would come from no one other than the squad member herself, Ilhan Omar. Now, I'm sure everyone has their feel about this particular congresswoman. I personally am pretty disgusted with her overall, and I don't normally have a lot of nice things to say about her. But I'll just read you this. This is a liberal source, I presume. You know, it's here. At least they reported it on some level. This is from the Washington Free Beacon, and this is entitled, Ilhan Omar says Iran tensions are triggering her PTSD. So this is written by Alex Griswold. This was written today, and it was published, I guess, around 5:50 p.m. So what I want to do is I want to maybe paraphrase a little bit of this, and I want you to, you know, maybe get her. I want you to get her tone and her sentiment about all of this. Okay, here it says, Representative Ilhan Omar, a Democrat of Minnesota, said Wednesday that discussions about military tensions between Iran and the United States were triggering her post-traumatic stress disorder. Quote, I feel ill a little bit because of everything that is taking place, and I think every time I hear of conversations around war, I find myself being stricken with PTSD, quote. Omar said during a press conference held by the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Imagine that. And I find peace knowing that I serve with great advocates for peace and people who have shown courage against war. Omar has previously referenced her post-traumatic stress disorder to excuse a 2012 tweet that said Israel, quote, hypnotized the world, an anti-Semitic trope. Quote, you know, I have PTSD around like guns and ammunition and bombs, she told the New Yorker, citing her childhood in war-torn Somalia. And I'll go on. It says at other times Omar has used the term in a more joking manner, such as when she said the new Democratic House majority had a minority PTSD. The kind of mindset you develop when you are in the minority is one that is really traumatizing, she said. Omar's PTSD did not appear to affect her behavior later in the Wednesday press conference. She was seen laughing and talking in the background as fellow Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, another Golden Girl, Democrat of Texas, spoke about casualties during the Iraq War. Quote, absolutely disgusting, tweeted GOP Rapid Response Director Steve Guest. Okay, so there you have it. So there you go. That is a bit of the crown, or a bit of most of what I wanted you to see from there. So there again, you know, all this talk about PTSD makes me think of, from this particular group, this particular woman, in my mind, is a bit of a radical. And when I think of the way she projects, you know, for her to have PTSD, she is projecting, for one, that she survived something. But she's the one that seems to always be assaulting Americans and American values. So what does she think that her excuses and her quote, some people did something? What does she think that does to the American people who survived something like 9/11? What does she think about that? I mean, I think that might be, somebody might consider that to be PTSD when they see her presence and when they hear her rhetoric. You know, she doesn't really have any real power. It's just that the media loves that kind of rhetoric and they give it to her. And in fact, I'm pretty much, you know, giving her some time on my particular channel right now. But what I'm saying is that she's projecting, she's a survivor. Ilhan Omar is a survivor. She's a survivor of her war-torn Somalia, which, in fact, I've heard there's a lot to be uncovered about Miss Omar. In fact, I think there's stories that she and former President Obama know each other quite well. So yeah, she definitely survived something, but it's going to be something you're going to find along the lines of maybe a more radical. Her story is not what she says it is. In fact, it's more of a projection story. Her whole victimhood and oppressor, her victocrat card is actually she's been an oppressor of her own people, and I'll put it there and I'll leave it there for another episode. But I love how she gets on TV and on the media and starts projecting about how traumatized she is and how much of a victim she is. And, you know, of course she's devastated because she's an empathizer. She's an empathizer of these nations that she represents, her ideology. She is in the minority in many ways in this country. Yes, that part I agree. She is. She's an infiltrator to many. So I just thought that was more than interesting. I don't know if anybody's here. I'm always happy to have you guys here. Let me know what you think about this PTSD that she describes. I mean, who knows? I mean, she still has to keep her seat in these upcoming elections, so we'll see if she survives that. You know, that might be interesting to see if she survives that, and will she be stricken? Will she be stricken with that as PTSD? Okay, so if anybody else is out there, I'm not sure what's going on here, but it looks like, and maybe I would tell you there's a bit of censorship going on here, just FYI, and I'm sure that probably something in the algorithm there. So I didn't mean to disconnect anyone or, you know, eject anyone from the chat that may have been trying to connect. I mean, it looks like this is a commonality. So if you could like, subscribe, share, that's always helpful on this channel. But I just thought that, you know, there's a lot of disrespect for there to be an apology or empathizers when our troops are out just doing their jobs and upholding their end of their oath from the Constitution. So I would like to once again thank everybody for tuning in for this segment. And whether they like what I'm saying here or not, I'm glad that you tuned in, and I will see you next time on Black Spring with Autumn.